everyone, it's Carly Hall, and today's video is on a fun activity that I thought would be useful for kids that are stuck at home just looking for an activity to keep them a little bit busy. As you may know, I do not have kids, so I consulted my friends and asked what would be something that would keep your kids entertained for a couple of minutes, and so this is what I came up with. Originally, I was just planning on making this project for my nephews, so I created these alphabet tracing boards, and I used my Glowforge. So this is 1/8 inch acrylic, and then I cut it and engraved it on my Glowforge, and then I ended up adding these little felt dividers that I cut on my Cricut, and then they don't rub against each other. I blocked out his last name for a little bit of privacy there. But I created these tracing boards that you can use a dry erase marker, you can write on them, and then you can use a paper towel and erase them. So I wanted them in a binder so that you could just hand it to your child, have them practice their tracing. And so I worked on 2 little worksheets, and hopefully I'll add some more soon. So after I created that idea, I realized, well, most people don't have access to a laser in their home. So I wanted to rework the idea so that it also works with your Cricut cutting machines. So I'll show you what I came up with, and then we'll jump into design space and then use our Cricut cutting machines to cut. So you'll have to let me know how you end up making this project. There's so many different ways to make it, so you'll have to let me know. All right, let's get started. If you have a Glowforge, you can upload this file to your Glowforge. I would recommend cutting it mirrored, so I cut it this way, engraved on the back, and then that way it's nice and smooth on the front, and you can just use a dry erase marker and trace right over, and then just erase it with a paper towel. So it's really nice, and then I added these felt dividers between each layer of acrylic so they don't rub against each other and get scratched. So again, you can find these acrylic dividers, the file for the acrylic dividers, and I used 1/8 acrylic and then engraved them, and I'll put the settings that I used in the blog so you have those. So if you have a Glowforge, then you can go ahead and do it this way. If you don't have a Glowforge, then you'll just need some type of plastic. So I used this transparency film since I have a laser printer, and you can use a transparency film that works with laser printers or inkjets depending on the type of printer you have. But if you don't have transparency film, don't worry. You can use lamination or even your mat protector, the plastic that goes over your mat, or a plastic bag. So you can get creative. I know that we're all trying to stay home, so you can either order something or use plastic that you already have in your house. So I chose to use a transparency, and then I'll show you a couple of ways that I used it. So your first option is to just print out the alphabet sheet and then put a transparency sheet on top of it. So you don't even need a cutting machine for this. You can just go to the blog and find this little sheet and then download it and print it off using your home printer. And it works just as well. You can see that you can write right over it. You could put it in a binder like I did with my acrylic, and then you can just wipe it off just like that. So again, you just have to print out the sheet on the blog and then place a piece of transparency over it and use a 3-hole punch and punch it. So no cutting machine required. You can just print it and you're ready to go. So that is the first option. The next option is to print directly on the transparency film. So I did mirror my image, so it's printed on this side, and then that way the front is nice and smooth. So if you have transparency film, you can print directly on there and then just punch it. And again, I'll just show you that it does work. You can write out your name, and then you can erase it. So that is option number 2. You also don't need a cutting machine for this option. So you just upload it and print it. Again, make sure to mirror your image so that it's nice and smooth on the front. So option number 2, no cutting machine required. And the final option, I did use my Cricut, and I had my Cricut write my words out or my letters out, and then I cut the cardstock and the transparency film using my cutting machine so that I could put it into a binder. And then you can see that since I used my Cricut to write, it did write the bubble letters, which I actually like because then it creates little tunnels for you to trace inside of. So I thought that was kind of cool. And like you saw before, you can easily wipe that off and you're good to go. So you can create tons of different worksheets. You could create them to say whatever you want and then just throw a piece of transparency over the top and put it in a binder. So I'm going to show you how to do this version today, but like I mentioned, I will add all the files to that post linked in the description below. So let's get started in Design Space. In Design Space, after you've downloaded the files from my blog, you will upload them using Cricut Design Space. So you'll choose Upload, Browse, and then whatever file you want. We're going to be using the tracing board draw or cut file, and we're going to open that up. When it comes in, it'll look like this. You can name it whatever you'd like and then click Save. Click on that image and insert it into your canvas. And it comes in the size that I recommend. It's 8.34 by 10.79. I did make it smaller than 8.5 by 11 because I liked the way that it fit in the binder just a little bit better. So we're going to zoom in so you can see what's going on. When it comes in, it'll look exactly like this. You have a cut layer and then another cut layer on top with the alphabet. But we want to actually draw this. Of course, you could cut it mirrored with vinyl and then apply it to the underside of the transparency, but that seems like a lot of work, and with how busy moms are right now, I thought this would be a little bit easier. So you're going to select this layer right here, and then up at the top under line type, you're going to drop down and you're going to choose Draw. This will work on both a Maker and Explore machine. It won't work on the Cricut Joy just because the image is bigger than the cut area, but you could shrink it down if you wanted to have super tiny alphabet practice sheets. You'll see it turns it into bubble letters, which is what we want. And if we were to make this right now, I'll show you what happens. You would see the alphabet on one page and your cut on another. So we don't want that. But we do want to make a copy of this cut layer because we're going to cut our transparency film out of it. So go ahead and click on just the background layer, and either using Control-C or Command-C on your keyboard, or the duplicate option up here, you're going to duplicate that. So we'll have a copy for our transparency. Then select both of these layers and attach them together. Now when we click Make It, you'll have your layer that we're going to cut our transparency film on, and then the layer that we're going to draw and cut. Click Continue, and then connect to your machine. We're using medium cardstock, so choose medium cardstock for your draw and then cut. We'll choose transparency when we cut the next one. After you load your cardstock onto your mat, you'll load that into the machine. And then I'm using a medium tip 1.0 marker, and you'll put that into the first slot and make sure that it goes down so you can no longer see the arrow, and then click the C button. Once your machine is done cutting, remove your pen and then unload your machine. So now we're ready to cut our transparency film, so we are going to navigate to Browse All Materials. And if you are on an Air 2, you'll want to turn your dial to Custom and then Browse All Materials. We're going to search for transparency and choose that option there. Back on the machine side, we will unload our cardstock off the mat. And we have our alphabet practice, and now we just need to cut our transparency film. You can check to make sure that your transparency cut through, and then unload that off the mat. As a reminder, if you don't have transparency film, you can sacrifice one of your matte liners and then cover your matte liner with something else. I've used wax paper in the past, and that's worked great, or just another type of material. So last resort, if you don't have a transparency film, you could use your matte liner. But our cut is done. You can see how cute it is. And you can download the other option that has the shapes and numbers and name practice, and you can also write it out using your Cricut and then cutting an additional piece of transparency, or even just using one and swapping back and forth between the two. So I hope this is helpful. Again, I don't have children, so I'm not sure if this will keep your kids busy, but I know when I was a kid, this kind of stuff was my bread and butter. I loved doing tracing activities. So hopefully this will help your kids stay preoccupied for a couple of minutes. And I hope you guys are all staying safe in your homes. And if there are other craft ideas that your kids have been asking for that I could help with, please let me know. Or head over to my Facebook group, Cricut Crafts with Carly Hall, for more ideas, see what other people are crafting. Hopefully we'll get through this together. So again, let me know how I can help. Of course, you can always leave a comment or check out any of the social media links to get in touch with me. All right, I'll see you in the next video.